Hello friends, I'm Brian, and this is Gizmo Board Games. Today I'm doing a review of a game that came out in 2022 by Pythagoras called Moesteiro. I believe I got that close enough. Hopefully I didn't butcher it. A game designed by Rolla and Costa. I didn't know anything about this game, and my buddy Ian saw it somewhere and thought it looked like something I would enjoy and picked it up for me. Have not heard about it, looked up a little bit, thought, yeah, I might enjoy this. So I played this a few times, and now I'm going to bring a review to you because I don't think there are many reviews out there for this game. Again, I didn't know much about it ahead of time either. So anyway, I'll go ahead and take you to the board and kind of explain how it's played, and then come back for my Gizmo ratings on the game. Alright, so here you have an overhead view of the game setup. I've got it set up for 2 players, and there's going to be something different if you're not playing with the full 4 players. It's a game that goes 2 to 4. There's no solo mode, but I have played this with 2 and with 4, and I'll kind of touch up on that when I get to my thoughts later. But anyway, in a 2-player game, you're going to have each player, or any number count game, you're going to have each player start off with 2 small dice. These are known as the workers, and 1 larger dice known as the master. And as the game progresses through the rounds, you're going to get various other things, and you're going to interchange in and out the dice in different rounds. So the first thing you're going to do in any given round is roll all the dice and see what you end up with. The big dice only have the numbers 1, 2, and 3 on them. On the yellow die, I rolled a 3, and on my die, I rolled a 1. So we need to add up all the large dice rolls together to determine the pool of the pillars or the columns and the heads. I don't remember what these are called exactly, but these are going to be limited from round to round based on the rolls of the large dice. So in this case, I rolled 4 combined between both the large dice for the players. We're going to take that result, divide by 2, and that's how many of these are going to go into the pool for basically part 3 here. So I'll pop 2 down here, and then the columns, you're going to divide by 3. So 4 divided by 3 is only going to get 1 for the round. So once all the dice are rolled and you determine the amount of the limited resources that are going to go out, in a 2 and 3 player game, you're also going to take some not used dice, dice of a different color, and roll those 2 and place them on the board accordingly. The problem is I don't know what accordingly is. I know that I'm going to place them in these spots and in this spot down here. But I don't know how to determine which die goes where because the die numbers do matter. And the rules don't really specify. It just says place 3 of an unused color onto those spots in a 2-player game and 2 of them in a 3-player game. And it doesn't specify any more than that. So what I tended to do is pick up the 2 dice to place there and the 1 to place there. I wish that was more clear in the rules. But anyway, I've got those placed now, and it's always going to be the lowest number to the left with the higher number to the right, and that'll go true for your worker placement because these dice, again, are going to be your workers for the round. After all the dice are placed, the next thing you're going to do is choose a king. There are 6 different kings for the round. Basically, the lower number king, the earlier you go in turn order in the round, but the higher numbers you get, the more valuable the resources you are going to get. So let me go ahead and pop the kings over here under my green screen. Hopefully this works a little bit. But basically, the number 1 king is going to give you a movement up the pip track here in the middle if you choose that king, and you're going to get the first play in the round. The number 2 king just gets you 3 points right off the bat. You'd move up 3 points if you choose that king, and you would go second in the round or first if nobody chose the number 1 king, because that would be the next lowest number. The number 3 king will get you just 1 stone right there on the bottom. So you just take a stone and get it. The number 4 king would let you choose from the limited resources. So a column or the topper. I don't remember what it's called exactly. The number 5 king, hopefully you can see that all right, allows you to move 2 spaces up the build track. And that comes into play later when you're working to build the monastery, because that is the ultimate goal, is to help build this monastery, and the monastery is going to be built over the course of the 5 rounds, regardless of whether you contribute to it or not. But the person who contributes the most to it will probably win the game. And then the last one goes last in the round, but gets to go first in the build phase, which is, again, probably the most important part of the game, is building towards the monastery. And that's what you're doing in the game. You're gathering resources to ultimately try to help contribute to the monastery. I've got 4 monastery tiles put out. There's 2 different sets of these. There's some blue ones and some green ones. I've got the green ones out now, and they've got different requirements as you go along to build the monastery, but in the end there are 20 of each of the stacks, and all 20 will come out and make the cathedral or the monastery complete at the end of the game. All right, so once the kings are chosen, you move on to the next phase. The next phase of action is the actual action. So in turn order, depending on, again, the kings you chose, and let me just go ahead and say I'm going to go ahead and take this build king. I don't want to move my dice around too much. And we'll give my opponent here just the 3 points right off the bat. So my opponent would go first. They're going to take one of their dice and place it into one of the 5 sections on the board. So the first section is up here, and you're going to resolve these in order at the end of the round too. So the first section just allows you to get wood resources or bread resources to move up the bread track. And the further down the track you get, the more you can do here when you're helping construct in the village. Which is the second part. If you come here, you're going to help construct in the village, and I'll cover these all here shortly. Then you're going to have the special resources, rocks or the tops or the columns. The fourth part goes into a little bit of set collection, and so does the fifth part with these build modals, and also this section allows you to move up the build track. And this is just straight set collection up here on the stained glass window. So there's 5 places you can play. And when you play a die, you can play either your large die or your small die. And where they go in is in numerical order to the rightmost spot of any ties. So if I took their 2 here, I would slide these 2 dice over because it's a 4 and a 5 and put their 2 in there. And then it would be my turn to go. And maybe I want to go ahead and help construct on the construction here. So that die would just block that up. No one. I need one more there. Maybe I'm going to come work on my build. I took the build from the start. I didn't move myself up those 2. And now I'm looking to get some more build going, pushing the 6 further away. Back to this player. They've got a 6 here, and they're going to try to come get some of these rare resources down here. I see that coming. This is where the big dice come in play, because the big dice will always win the spot, basically. So even if I played a 6 here, which I couldn't do on the big die, I would bump them over and get first play here. But the 1 is kind of low. I don't want to do that with my 1. The 4 will do the job, so I'm going to do that with my 4. The 3 here, this is where it comes in with the tiebreaker. They would actually take this first spot and push my 3 over. But if there's a small 3, they would actually go into the second spot and not push me over. And that matters a lot more for these spots, because actually in this track, I'd probably rather take the better, more to the right spot. And that's something else I'll get into probably when I cover the game. And then for my last action, I think I'm going to go ahead and place mine there and help build the village, just to give you an example of pretty much everything you can do. The one thing I didn't do is move the guy over to the round. We're actually going to get 1 wood and 1 stone to start off in the first round for each player. So a little bit of head start. Then you're going to come up here in player order, or number order, I should say, in dice order. So starting with the yellow die here, I could take those 2 pips, and each pip get me 1 wood, or 2 pips would move you up 1 on the bread track. And I think they want to get some wood. So they'll use 1 pip to get a wood, so they now have 2 wood. And then I think they're going to use the second pip plus spend a pip using the pip track here, just to use it as an example. You can move your tracker down this track to the left to spin a pip to get an extra use. So now I'm going to turn the 1 left over into 2 so they can move up on the bread track. The other thing I could have done was had the 1 left over and actually add a pip on this track by basically passing the second pip to add to the track, because you're going to get more points the further to the right you go, and less points the further left. But let's say they went ahead and bought a pip as a second pip so they can move the bread track, which puts them 1 spot closer. Then for the green, nothing happens. Those are just dummy dice. For my turn, I'm going to help build the village. In order to help build the village, there are 4 tiles at random laid out. They cost pip value, as indicated on the right-hand side, if any, and the resources on the left-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and spend an extra pip because I only got a 1 right now. I didn't pay that much attention to that. Boom, spend an extra pip. So now it's a 2. I need 2 pips. I'm going to spend 2 pips in the stone. I'm going to build this building in the village, and I can put it anywhere in this row. So I could put it here and take 5 points, or I can put it here and get 2 points and get that pip back. So I think I'll just do that. Do that, get 2 points, and move back up on the pip track. So that takes care of that. I'll go ahead and send the dice back to where they go. Now, part 3. Red's here first. At this station, every pip you can buy for 1 stone. Every 2 pip will get you one of these plinths. And every 3 pips will get you a pillar. I think I'm going to spend 5 pips to buy 2 and a 3. So I got to spend another pip that I just had bought back. And now I've got these resources to use later. My opponent here was hoping to get that. They put a 6 there. They're going to go ahead and take this for 2 of them. And then they'll take a couple stone for 2. And then they're going to go ahead and move back up this track so they got those pips to use later, or they're going to get the 5 points if this were the end of the game. Coming down here, you're going to start here, move up the build track. It's a +1 for them, so I'll move them up the build track 1, and they're going to take this tile for set collection. There are 3 different tiles on the build track, these tiles here, and there are 2 different stained glass windows on the stained glass window track. And at the end of the game, for the different set collections you collect, you're going to score more points. So ideally, you're going to try to get all 5 different images or arts by the end of the game. But also some of them, such as this building, requires you to spend 1 build tile. So we couldn't even have contributed to the village at all this round because we didn't have any build tiles to start the game, and that phase to get those comes later. So this was kind of a garbage village piece. Another little nitpicky thing I have about the game. And okay, so they're done. Red's going to move 2 up and take this one back home. Again, a different art style piece for that set collection. And then green does nothing. Nobody went here, but basically you're going to pay 1 pip to go here, and then an additional pip for every pip that's uncovered. And if you take the top one, you will automatically move up the bread track. After those 5 phases are done, we'll move into the help the cathedral phase, or the monastery. Help build the monastery phase. And in this phase, you're going to help contribute towards one of these 4 pieces, or just pass. And my opponent here has enough to contribute to this tile here. Hopefully you can see it all right, because this one requires 1 wood, 1 of the toppers, and 1 stone. And if you can see it, I don't know if you can see very well, in the top right corner, it's going to be a -3 on the build. So they're going to have to go down 3 on the build track. So now they have no build for the future, but they're going to get 12 points when they turn in these resources. And they're all numbered. When you flip it over, it's got the monastery art on it, a little bit of green screen, and it's got the number 7 here. So I'll put it in the 7 spot right there on the monastery. And that part of the monastery is built. If you can't help contribute, or if you can't help build a complete piece, because especially in a 4-player game, you're going to be fighting over these 4. Where was that? How was it? You can contribute part of it. So if I was to try to contribute to this one, I don't have 2 wood, but I could contribute 1 wood, and the pillar I have for 3 points each as written on the board. So I could get 6 points by helping contribute to a little bit. However, I'm going to help contribute to this one, which I can build, because I can build a wood, a pillar, and a plinth. Boom. I can move down 3 on the build track and help contribute to number 1. And how many points do they get? Because I didn't mark those off. So they get 12 points, taking them to 15. And I get 13 points, taking me to 15. Anything not helped build by the players will automatically just get thrown in to the monastery. Then that'll complete the round. At the end of the round, you'll make sure everybody's got their dice back. Everybody will put their kings back. And you'll get ready for the next round by moving the round tracker and doing whatever that bonus is. Again, rolling the dice, rolling the dummy dice, and moving on through the game. Through 5 rounds, you do that. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. Don't forget about the set collection for the various builder tokens and art tokens that you can collect along the way. For having different ones, not same ones, different ones for the set collection. You'll refill the village row at the end of a round. You'll refill the build row here, and as needed on the stained glass window. And that's pretty much the game. It's a easy, nice little dice worker placement game that plays pretty easily with a little bit of complexity in it. And I'm going to go ahead and take us back to the front view to give my gizmo thoughts. All right, so my thoughts, starting with G, the gameplay. The gameplay is okay. It's a standard Euro type dice worker placement. The pips matter for the dice. I like the little pip track that you can use to either get points by, helping build pips, or, help you if you didn't place enough. If you rolled poorly, you can spin those pips down the track to a certain point to add them to your actions. So I do like that little bit of mitigation / point acquiring on that track. Otherwise, yeah, it's easy enough. I think you could teach this to relatively new gamers, and they'll pick up on it pretty easily. The guys I played with picked it up pretty quickly. Roll some dice, place them in numerical order, with the big dice kind of winning the tiebreakers automatically, and sliding every other die to the right, making their actions potentially, worse because they're going later for that action if it's a limited action slot, or they just got to spend more resources, such as in the forest, to get wood. As you move further to the right of the track, you're going to spend 2 pips per wood instead of 1. I didn't really cover that in the overview. So yeah, you got roll dice, place them, and generate resources to try to get points by helping build towards the monastery. You've got a few options, again, with helping the village. If you just want to play kind of on the village track and move your bread up and try to get resources for the village instead of the monastery, I don't know if that's going to be a solid strategy in the end, because you're going to get more points out of helping for the monastery. But if you can't generate the resources, especially in the last round, you could at least help in the village and get some points and other things that way. Plus, the further you go, the more those will help you get some resources too. I do like a little bit of the set collection. I think that one could play a big role. I know it did in my 2-player game. The difference in the scoring was from the set collection. In the 4-player game, pretty much everybody had collected everything, because you're kind of forced to collect some on the build track to move up the build, the crane, to be able to help build the bigger monastery pieces, because they're going to cost 4 and 5 and 6 build points. So you do need to focus on that. And that's kind of one of my problems with the gameplay. I mentioned earlier, your village tiles are going to come out kind of randomly. And in the first round, I had one that required a build token, which you couldn't get till later in that round. So that's just a piece that's not usable for the first round, and a thing you can't do in that round. In addition, the dice are going to hurt. If you're spending resources and dice pips to help the village, you're not going to have them to get the resources you need to help the monastery. And that seems like it's the bigger play in the end. I do like that you can use the dummy dice as a way to, help fill in the spots and give you something to work around. But other than that, they don't do a lot. The thing I also don't like is, especially in a 2-player game, on this bottom track here, and I'll go back to it here, a bottom track here, you want to play high dice because you want to be moved to be able to move up 4 spots. That's a +4 here on the right. You can't really see it. 3, 2, 2, 1. In a 2-player game, yeah, you got 1 dummy die in there. But if that's a high roll dummy die, like I rolled a 6 for this game, like all that's going to do is get pushed over here and block that +4 anyway. And with 2 players and 5 spots to go and only 3 dice, obviously you're not getting to all the spots regardless. So even if you come over here with 2 of your dice, you're relying on your opponent here to push you on that track to maybe get the set collection piece you want, but they know you want that one, or to give you up the build track, which they also know you want. So if you come over here and immediately place your 6, you're probably just sitting there on that 6. Nobody's going to push you to the right. In a 4-player game, we didn't have that problem as much, but in the 2-player game, we definitely ran into that issue. I do like that you can't go here in a 2-player game spot. I wish they had kind of done that over here, where maybe they did the same thing here. Instead of like place a dummy dice, just make that you can't go there in a 2-player game. Maybe even those 2, and then you're always getting +2, 3, or 4. And that makes that action spot a little tighter. The stained glass window is okay. It doesn't contribute a whole lot to the game unless you're having to pull out monastery pieces that require stained glass window. Pretty much whoever goes here is probably just going to go up and take the one at the top and get the bread. I've covered the village. It's a good way to get points and resources quickly. I played that in my 4-player game, and it seemed to do okay, but in the end, I couldn't play both here in the monastery just because you can't generate enough resources, especially with the limited resources there. And I do like that aspect of the gameplay too. The fact that you're not always going to be able to grab everything you need of the special resources. On the downside, you're not going to be able to grab what you need for the special resources, which you potentially will need to get the points at the end of the game, or from the monastery at the end of the round. So there's a whole lot of, I wish it was a little bit different in this game, but I think it's good for what it does. It's an easy, nice flowing dice worker placement game that didn't take too terribly long and wasn't too terribly complex to figure out. So yeah, it's an okay gameplay. I could play it again. I could also play other similar games, games that do, resource collection and dice worker placement that I just enjoy better. So I'm not sure I'm going to pull this one out as often. But for introducing people to some of these mechanics, it's a lot easier than some of the other ones too. All right, the ingredients. What do I think of the ingredients? Well, we were all in my group talking about these pillars that you have there. It's literally just broken bits of pencil, complete with the lead in the middle. We thought that was humorous. It seems kind of, I don't want to say cheap, but they could have done something different than cut up a pencil into bits and make it a component. The rest of the wood components are not bad. They're standard wooden components. The cardboard are standard cardboard components. It's all good quality stuff in here. The dice are nice, except for the yellow dice. You can't see the pips, and that's a bad, I don't know if I can make this better, but the pips just basically disappear on the yellow dice unless you're right at them. And that's a little frustrating, especially if you're someone on the other side of the board trying to figure out what one of your opponents has. So yeah, the yellow dice is not the greatest. I wish they had gone with the black dots instead of the white dots, but that's a small complaint. Otherwise, the components are decent quality. I like the mix of, the 2 different versions of Monastery with different needs as far as the resource costs. I think the blue stack requires more of the tokens here, the builder's tokens and the stained glass tokens. So I haven't played with the blue ones yet, but I think that's kind of the case, which might force you to go to these tracks more often than, this track. But that's really only gameplay, and you can't, or I think you can mix and match too, as long as you only got one of each of the numbers 1 through 20. So I might have to try that mode as well. So I like that there's some options in there. The art's really good. The cathedral, I like how it slowly builds out as the game goes on. Let me put some more pieces here. At each round, you're going to get 4 more pieces into the monastery, and it's going to be built by the end of the game. And that's pretty neat. That's a neat little aesthetic to slowly see it coming together as the game progresses. Otherwise, it's pretty standard, brown-green art for, old-timey monastery building. So, good enough. The ingredients and the art is pretty good. I like it. The Z, is it easy to play? I mentioned this kind of in the gameplay, but yeah, it's not hard. It's roll some dice, figure out how you want to manipulate them to spin the pips to get the components you're trying to get to build the monastery to get the points. 5 rounds, 5 action spots, 3 to 5 dice depending on the round, and a little bit of set collection, and a little bit of choices with which king you want for each round. So there's enough to make it a little complex, but not overly complex for newer gamers to get into pretty easily. So I think it's pretty decently balanced as far as game complexity. So I would call this easy to play for the most part with some complexity. More of it. The M. Do I want more of it? And I kind of hinted at this already, but not specifically. There's, like I said, there's variety. These are going to come out variable. Dice rolls are always going to be variable. The 2 different stacks, those are pretty cool. But in the end, I've just got other similar games that scratch the itch for me a little bit better than this one. So while I don't mind playing it, and if I've got newer gamers or maybe my daughter or something wants to get into these kind of resource and dice manipulation and generation games, I could see pulling it out for that purpose. But if I'm just looking for a straight Euro that involves worker placement, dice workers, resource generation, literally all these things that are kind of in this game, I've just got other games that I'd go to probably before this one to give me that little bit more that I like. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking Trois. Why am I not pronouncing this well? Trois. I would pull that game out before this one just because it gives me that little bit more of the complexity that I look for normally, personally. For dice worker placement, I really like Euphoria, Build a Better Dystopia. Does kind of a similar thing with more going on. But this one's not bad for what it does. I would play it again, no problem. Just it's not something I'm going to be wanting to play a lot more often over some of the other similar games. That's all. Originality, not really. I mentioned other games that kind of do the same thing. It's kind of standard Euro affair. Build a thing, Monastery, looking at the 1600s or whatever, 1300s. It looks like 1386 to 1563 is kind of the time period. That's a common time period that's covered by these Euros. Worker placements, not original. Dice worker placement, not original. Resource generation, not original. So nothing about this game really screams originality in really any way, shape, or form. That's not really a knock against the game. It's just what it is. It came out in 2022, and it does things that games have been doing for quite a while. So yeah, it doesn't have much originality in it. All right, so that brings me to my final thoughts. My final thoughts, and I'm sure you've already picked up on this from just going through my Gizmo scale, is this is an all right game. It's okay. Nothing special, nothing that calls me back to it more and more again, but it does enough to make it a fun play and a good light to medium game for newer gamers to get them into the heavier games. So it does that pretty well, but it doesn't do anything new and exciting for me, and that's why I just kind of rate this one at a 2.5 to 3, right at a 2.75 if you want to get official. So I could round it up to a 3, I could round it down to a 2.5. It's right there in the middle. On BGG, it's going to be a 5.7, I believe, is what I had it at. Right there in the middle of everything. So yeah, it does the job. It's a game. It's an enjoyable game. Nothing spectacular about it. It's right there, kind of in the middle of the pack as far as a game could be, I think. And I'm happy to have it. I'm happy to have played it, but not one I'm itching to pull off a whole lot. So if you like a lighter weight Euro with dice worker placement and some resource generation and manipulation, I would recommend this one for sure, especially if you're trying to get newer gamers into the hobby. I think this is a good stepping stone, especially for a game that not many people have heard of. So from that point of view, if you just want to have something different on your shelf, yeah, this definitely could fit that bill. For me, it's decent. I'm glad to own it, and I'm glad to play it from time to time. Just I've got other games I prefer more. And that's kind of where I stand on this one, and it should be hopefully reflected in my rating. And if you thought this review was a good one, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see more content from me. And comment below if you've played this one, because I don't know many people who are talking about this one. So comment below if you have and what your thoughts on it are. I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.